Amid war's chaos and brutality, when violence prevails and lives are torn apart, horrific acts of cruelty are perpetrated on defenseless civilians. World War II was a moment of unrivaled misery, with a never-ending wave of dread that featured not only the horrors carried out on women. A horrific and little-discussed chapter in history, the awful destiny of homosexuals during the Nazi era. We are now on a mission to uncover the shocking truth about forced prostitution, a perverse attempt to cure homosexuality during the war. What unthinkable difficulties did these people face? And why have their accounts been doomed to obscurity? Prepare yourself as we tackle the terrifying facts of this buried past, discovering the depths of this dark history and illuminating the unanswered mysteries. Join us as we bring their stories to light, refusing to allow their pain to go unacknowledged any longer. Sexual encounters between the local female citizens and enemy soldiers were particularly problematic. In times of war, the female body represents not just the nation, but also the reason why men fight and the sexual delights they anticipate upon their victorious return. As a result, the enemy's conquest of the female body has a highly symbolic significance, leading military and political leaders to sanction or encourage sexual assault against women in armed situations. But there were times when women were suppressed during the war and forced into prostitution by several military forces to ensure that the male prisoners and the soldiers did not get involved in homosexual activities. As the war raged on, the SS devised a chilling fate for homosexuals, one that went beyond mere dismissal and punishment. They planned to publicly strip them of their positions, subject them to court trials, and subsequently send them to concentration camps. There, any attempt to escape would be met with a swift execution. Heinrich Himmler, the architect of terror, envisioned a society built upon strength and endurance, a so-called Männerstaat, where cooperation among men reigned supreme. In this vision, there was no place for homosexuals, perceived as the third sex, who were deemed incompatible with the ideals of this new order. In the lead-up to Hitler's rise to power, all active gay organizations in Germany were swiftly declared illegal. Kurt Hiller, appointed by Magnus Hirschfeld to lead the Scientific Humanitarian Committee, found himself imprisoned in the Oranienburg concentration camp. Even though he was released 9 months later for unknown reasons, the crackdown on homosexuality became even more severe. Ernst Röhm's brown shirts targeted gay bars across the country, forcing many to close or operate illegally. The situation escalated further in 1934, when the Gestapo issued a letter to all police stations, instructing them to compile a comprehensive list of individuals engaged in any form of homosexual activity. The Berlin police alone managed to assemble a staggering roster of approximately 30,000 homosexuals. By May 1935, the SS magazine Das Schwarze Korps went so far as to demand the death penalty for gay individuals. The ominous call for execution added to the mounting climate of fear and persecution. Homosexuals were trapped in a nightmarish world where their identities were ruthlessly targeted, their lives hanging in the balance. The specter of the concentration camps loomed large, ready to claim those labeled as deviants by the Nazi regime. Amidst the dark confines of the concentration camps, a twisted and sinister scheme took shape, the establishment of camp brothels. These brothels, designed as barracks enclosed by barbed wire fences, served a dual purpose. Not only were they meant to entice prisoners into collaboration, but they were also utilized as a tool to address what the Nazis deemed as deviant sexual orientations, particularly homosexuality. The first camp brothel emerged in Mauthausen-Gusen in 1942, and in the following years, similar establishments were introduced in Auschwitz, Buchenwald, Neuengamme, Dachau, Dora-Mittelbau, and Sachsenhausen. During World War II, the Germans ran over 500 such brothels, with Paris alone hosting 19 in its inner city. The scale of this endeavor was staggering, with an estimated 34,000 to 50,000 young girls and women forced into prostitution. Some historians suggest that the number of sex slaves may have been even higher. At the helm of this nefarious operation was Reinhard Heydrich, a high-ranking SS official notorious for his role in orchestrating the Holocaust. Heydrich issued the order to establish state-controlled prostitution, which took effect on March 16, 1940. The German commanders pursued a systematic approach to prostitution for a variety of reasons. The first motive behind the establishment of military brothels was the prevalence of venereal diseases among the soldiers. To combat this, prostitutes from the brothels underwent regular medical examinations, and soldiers were required to use condoms. The second reason was rooted in the Germans' suspicion of female spies. They noticed a correlation between soldiers socializing with local women and the accuracy of enemy attacks. This led to a deep-seated paranoia, and they considered good-looking women in occupied territories as potential informants who could compromise military secrets. The Germans believed engaging in sexual activities with local women could lead to betrayal. The third motive behind the establishment of military brothels stemmed from the Nazis' obsessive homophobia. They feared that without access to women, soldiers might turn to homosexuality. The Nazis viewed homosexuality as a threat to their vision of a society built on strength and endurance. By providing soldiers with access to prostitutes, they hoped to deter them from engaging in same-sex relationships. The search for prostitutes posed a significant challenge for the Germans, leading them to resort to sexual slavery. Raids were conducted in occupied cities and villages where women and teenage girls aged 15 to 30 were forcibly taken. These women were seized from pubs, often at gunpoint, loaded onto trucks and transported to unknown destinations. The fate that awaited them was one of sexual slavery or death. Most of these kidnapped women never returned home, forever lost to their families. The Ravensbrück concentration camp became particularly notorious for its role in providing sex slaves. Approximately 5,000 women from the center were selected to serve in the military brothels. Inside these grim structures, small individual rooms housed up to 20 female prisoners, overseen by a female supervisor or Ausseherin. The women, constantly replaced due to exhaustion and illness, were subjected to a harrowing cycle that ultimately led to their deaths. The brothels operated exclusively in the evenings, with Jewish male prisoners strictly prohibited as patrons. The customer lineup, available only to Aryan VIPs, required individuals to sign up for a specific day and pay 2 Reichsmarks for a predetermined 20-minute service. Controversial evidence suggests that some women may have had tattoos inscribed on their chests, marking them as field whores. Additionally, forced sterilizations and abortions were inflicted upon these prisoners, resulting in tragic consequences, including death. Although survivors' memoirs reference the subject of forced prostitution in the camps as early as 1972, it remained largely taboo until the mid-1990s, when female researchers began to shed light on this dark aspect of Nazi history. Heinrich Himmler, the architect of terror, viewed these brothels not only as tools for control, but also as a means to cure homosexuality. Pink Triangle prisoners, identified as homosexuals, were compelled to make mandatory weekly visits to the camp brothels, supposedly aimed at teaching them the joys of the opposite sex. A horrible revelation emerges from the depths of World War II atrocities: forced prostitution aimed at curing homosexuality. This evil campaign, coordinated by German forces, subjected thousands of innocent people to unspeakable horrors. These ladies faced a dismal fate, trapped in a nightmare existence, with many opting to end their pain by committing suicide. They were stripped of their humanity and degraded to become objects, compelled at gunpoint to fulfill the desires of German soldiers. Their lives became a horrible story of abuse and misery, with murder and suicide as tragic ends. Even those who survived the conflict bore the weight of their suffering, which was muffled by a society that chose to ignore them. We must remember and honor the victims of this heinous form of therapy, acknowledging the gravity of the abuse they underwent. Their experiences serve as a disturbing reminder of the depths of human evil and the critical necessity to confront our country's darkest chapters. May their anguish never be forgotten, and may we strive to create a world where such atrocities never occur again.